Go.
Hello everyone, welcome this evening to Noir of the North for Féile Festival. Thrilled to be here to chair this evening from my cabin in my back garden, as is lockdown life at the minute. And joining me is James Murphy and Simon Maltman, and we're three crime writers, and we're really going to talk this evening about our influences and about place in our work. And I was just wondering if, first of all, James, you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for hosting this, Kelly. My name's James Murphy, and I'm the author of a detective series set in West Belfast. It's set around an agency called Forest Investigations, and it's, I suppose, dealing with life in West Belfast, kind of post-conflict, which is where I grew up. So the Forest Investigations will be an ongoing series, but the first books deal with a specific serial killer called Terror, which is a trilogy of books which I'm working on the last one of at the moment.
Okay, great, thank you. And Simon, would you just introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Simon Maltman. I'm a crime fiction writer from Bangor. A lot of my books would sort of be set around North Down and a lot in Belfast as well. Although I did make the leap with my new book, The Mark, and most of it's actually set in Lanzarote. Well, I'll probably talk a bit about that a bit later, but it was actually when I was on holiday there, so I thought, well, it'd be quite nice, because usually I'm always writing about the same places, so it was nice to write about somewhere different. But yes, it's nice to be along, have a chat with you both. I'm out in the garage myself. we're just saying that earlier on, that sometimes even just going out into the garden or the garage is nice to have a change of scene during lockdown, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
I know.
Hopefully by the time this airs, things will be eased a little bit more, but for now, it's great that we can do it this way.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what is it about Belfast that produces crime writers, do you think? James, I'll start with you.
I suppose it's like every other major city in the UK. But for a long time we had obviously the conflict in Northern Ireland. But since all that has kind of died down or hopefully gone away, we're a major city in the UK with the problems that every other major city has in the UK. So
yeah,
your drugs, your crime, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a natural thing, I think, for people to, particularly people from Northern Ireland, to actually turn their writing to that particular topic. I think we're all so, well, to put it bluntly, we're fed up with the whole conflict and the writing around the conflict and all that sort of stuff. But in saying that, I mean, I when I set out my first book, I was determined that there would be no reference at all to anything to do with the Troubles.
Yeah.
I think I was about 2 chapters in when they started creeping in. So obviously you're influenced by it still. And maybe that's another reason why Northern Ireland has so many crime writers. It's a way of, I don't know, maybe processing what you've been through, or, you know, getting a sense of catharsis or something from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that really interesting what you're saying. I've heard a few crime writers say that they were determined they wouldn't write about the Troubles.
Yeah.
With my first book, I wrote about the Troubles, so it just seems like it's something you need to kind of say. There's something you have to say about it, and then you maybe move away, or maybe you don't. Maybe it influences smaller areas of your work. I don't know, of your books. Simon, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say, it's a wee bit, it can be a wee bit like the elephant in the room, I suppose, because I definitely, you know, was similar to you both, and sort of thought I don't want to write about the Troubles specifically, because I suppose to a large degree it's been done, and, you know, people talk about some of the books during the Troubles, like there were some really good ones, you know, like Silver City or something like that, but there were a lot of books that weren't so good, or often written from elsewhere, and they got different things quite badly wrong. But then we've obviously, we've completely had this boom. But I suppose most of us who are like in our 30s and 40s, that whole wave. I think it is people, who've more been growing up after the Good Friday Agreement. I suppose there's a safety, you can write about it, and it doesn't have to be directly about your day-to-day life. I suppose crime fiction is escapism. I think that's why it's booming. Even before Corona and everything, people want a bit of escapism, and I suppose Northern Ireland, you maybe couldn't have done that whenever there was like real life, I suppose, actual terror happening all the time. But I definitely was like, I don't want to write about the Troubles at all. But I think as I've gone on, no matter what you're writing about, it does creep in. It's probably creeping in slightly more now, probably because of the but I think more in a reflecting way. Like, it'd definitely be more trying to look back. Rather than set it in the heart of any kind of paramilitary groups now, or even in the past, like for instance, I don't know if you have read Brian McGilloway's recent book, the Last Crossing.
On my list.
It's a class when you need to check it out, and it deals with it so well. Half of it is set now, and then half of it is looking back at something that happened during the Troubles and where people are now. I mean, it's really, really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is that element, isn't there, of being a bit fed up. We've heard it, we've lived through it. It was what was always on the news, but it does kind of creeps in, maybe in some way. But was it Lee Child had said that Belfast is the most noir place in the world? And I know that we all set our work, our books, and far Féile too, but we do write about home as well. All three of us. The series that I'm writing at the minute is set in East Belfast, and I know, Simon, you write about East Belfast, and then James, you would write about West Belfast. So I think, what do you think that readers gain from reading? I suppose they might not be from here, so it might not be local events to them. But what do you think they gain from reading about Belfast, James?
I suppose a sense of the place as it is now would be the main thing. I mean, we all know that the tourism, for example, up until COVID was really booming in Northern Ireland, and Belfast has become a pretty major destination as a city in the UK. So I think our writing probably reflects that, but it also reflects some of the realities as well. I mean, when I first started the terror series, I mean, those are my first two books, or well, 2.5 at the moment. But I very much went to the idea of write about what you know, and people will engage with it and connect with it more. Although I don't think you necessarily have to be from Belfast to get it. It's just it's just a reflection of various facets of Belfast society or Northern Ireland society.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's an interesting place to have books, because it has got such, a vast history in all different ways. And I mean, I love the scenery of the country. Like, my first book was set up around the Causeway, just because I thought it really lent itself to a lot of drama, the Giant's Causeway and the cliffs and everything. And I've always thought that we can come up with perfectly good murders that aren't related to necessarily real life ones. We can have people doing heists and robberies and murders of passion the same as anywhere else. But I suppose people who are local, I've always enjoyed. I enjoy reading things where I know the places too. I always remember when I first got into Colin Bateman on the Mystery Man books, and them being set like in No Alibis and around Botanic Avenue and everything. There's something quite enjoyable about, I know there, I go there, I go and get a coffee in Starbucks up Botanic Avenue.
There's definitely an element to that.
Quite nice.
And actually, a thing that I noticed in a review I had a while ago was that somebody actually specifically mentioned the fact that it was obvious that I was from the area I was writing about. So for somebody to get that level of connection to your work just, from your setting, it has to be.
I think it is nice. It is nice if you're reading a book and you recognise the places. Like Simon, you said about being in Newcastle as well. You've got in the North Down, Newcastle and Giant's Causeway, and you've James, you've got Grosvenor Police Station, which I'm not saying I've ever been in, but I know it. And you've got
I know I've done Russian stuff as well, and
I think it's half of those. it's having those references, you know, it kind of grounds it more, and it makes it feel like, oh yeah, that's somewhere that I know. And I think that if you're going to libraries and talking to readers, they seem to really kind of to relate to that, to like that. Something
it's good too when you think you know an area, but then for the books you always do a good bit of research, even if it's somewhere thinking, oh well, and you can come up with all sorts of things. And I always quite like the fun of just putting in sometimes real life characters, like that one you're saying about Newcastle. That was a few books back, and I researched a whole lot about Percy French, just thought it would be interesting, and ended up slipping him in as a character and changing a few things, and even messed about with a few old Irish myths, which again is quite fun. I thought it was quite fun to mix things up, because then sometimes the reader doesn't know which bits you've made up and which bits are actually true, or which bits are or legends or whatnot. But I suppose that's what storytelling's all about.
Exactly. Yeah. And I suppose when you're writing about kind of local places like that, you do tend to, well, like anywhere you're writing about, you do tend to research, even though obviously you don't necessarily always need to. And one of the things I've noticed is some of the things that you actually come across, you probably couldn't make up if you tried.
Oh yeah.
I'd used a mill, a Belfast flax mill in the second book, at the beginning of the second book, and I staged the murder in it. And I was making sure that I was getting the logistics of the building and all that right. And when I came across, what the building was being used for now, it had been redeveloped as a kind of a business hub, but was owned by someone called James Murphy.
And do you have things like that? Yeah, do you ever have anything like that, like a little Easter egg in your book where you know it and you're trying to see if the readers would know it?
Oh, well sometimes definitely on purpose for fun, or just little stories like that your friends have done. I'll drop them in, and then they're like, oh, I know you were putting that in about me. Or conversely, sometimes people are convinced you based a character on them, and you really haven't. Or actually, there was one time, I think you were at that. It was at Aspects Festival, and a lady came up to me at the end and said, I think it was during it. She said, I had a character called Brian Caskey, who was an ex-RUC policeman from the Troubles, and then he ended up being a private detective or whatnot. And she said, so how do you know Brian? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she was like, Brian Caskey is from Carrickfergus, and I know him well, and and blah blah. No, I just made that up name. It's not based on that. I thought, gonna be getting a lawsuit next.
Yeah. No, it is funny that I've heard other writers talking about that, and that has definitely happened to me, where someone has thought they were a character in the book where they haven't been, and the other thing is people saying, well, that's really unbelievable. I had that about a short story that I wrote. Someone thought it was really unbelievable, and it was the one story in the collection that was based on something true.
Yeah.
You ever have that? Where something, it's like, it's so far-fetched, it's a whole thing about real life is stranger than fiction.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, definitely at the minute. I think that's why a lot of people have said, they couldn't get down to writing at the minute, because the stuff going on around the world is, much more fantastical than anything you might, be able to come up with. Did you find it hard to get into writing during lockdown, or did you find it okay?
Do you want to go first, Kelly?
Right, okay, I'll go first, yeah. I think definitely at the start, just before it all kicked off, I was at the River Mill at a retreat for about 3 nights, and I couldn't concentrate at all, and we were just waiting on it having to close. I had just changed my dates from the weekend after.
Yeah.
I realised that's going to be Mother's Day, and it was around the time of my launch that didn't happen as well before the sleeping season. So I couldn't concentrate for a couple of weeks, and then once April came around, I just forced myself into that kind of NaNoWriMo state, where you write the first draft of a novel. So I did that in April. So I think that just got me into it, because it was just a real confusing kind of time, wasn't it? Where it's hard to concentrate to read or to write, I found. What about you, James?
Yeah, I mean, at the start, I was thinking, this is great in a sense, because it removes all the excuses. I don't have to worry about not having time and all that sort of stuff. And I tried to sit down, and I just couldn't write. And I wasn't doing much reading then either. So I teach a crime fiction class, and that was still kind of finishing off, towards the end of before lockdown was announced. And I thought, do you know, I need to actually start practicing what I preach. And one of the things I say to the students is that, if you're finding it hard, whatever your chosen method is to write, if you want to sit down in front of the computer and type, if that's what works for you, great. But if you find that you have a bit of writer's block, change the way you do it. So instead of doing it, typing it out or on the laptop or whatever, get a notebook, go and sit in the garden or whatever. So I started doing that, and I started reading again, and the two started to dovetail. So still not writing anywhere near what I should be in a day, but I'm doing something.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because at the start, I when I first started writing, I just wrote short stories before my first novel about, I suppose, 5 years ago. And then I would seldom write any short stories now, because I do just love writing novels, and obviously they take up so much of your time. But I found at the start of lockdown, I kept on writing these short stories. Maybe it was just because I knew I could get little bursts of creativity and get it down. So I think I ended up writing about 4. But that was good. That was good fun. It probably flexed a different muscle too. It's probably quite good. And then now I've started into a new book, and I'm really enjoying it. Sometimes it's just getting into it, isn't it? We're getting it. Well, I'm now a bit more of a planner, so I do like planning it all out in my notebook to a certain degree. But I think that's one of the most fun parts.
Somebody said to me recently, a poet was saying, I don't know how you can do it. That you're sitting, you have such a big long piece of work stretching out in front of you. How do you actually manage to do it? And I thought, writing a poem or a short story would terrify me. And actually recently, I've literally went back and relearned how to write a short story, and in the last weeks. Strange.
Yeah. And what about you, James? Are you a plotter?
I'm a combination of plotter and pantser, I think. I essentially, what happens with me is I know where the main points are, so I know roughly where it's going to begin, what the middle point's going to be, and where it's going to end. How I get from to each stage, I would plan loosely, but I tend to be. I know people say it's strange doing it this way and stuff, but I tend to be trying to be intuitive and listening to the characters and where I've taken them, and think about how would it, if that person that happened to them in real life, what would they do?
Yeah.
How would they actually react? So giving yourself a bit of, I suppose, thinking time rather than planning time.
Yeah. It's funny as well, because I think the more you do it, I've heard different writers talk about that at festivals and things, and I think at the start you maybe think you've got an okay idea for a book, and if people seem to start liking it, you probably think I've got something that's going to work okay, but you don't think an awful lot about the reading experience. I didn't at the start, so I'm much more conscious now than I'm sort of thinking, I've been rambling on with some kind of pastoral scenes and character development. I need to give them a little bit of action. I'm more conscious that I think that they've been going for about 10 or 15 pages here, and there hasn't been anything particularly dramatic. It's maybe as well because I think the modern reader, to a certain degree, especially thriller readers, are looking for it to be more pacey. And although I still quite like reading thrillers that are more a bit of a slow burn, but I think readers seem to be more after that, and they're definitely a bit more conscious now. You're sort of thinking, I better structure this slightly different than I might have done.
Yeah, because I would say both of your writing would be very fast paced, and the other thing that I would say is they're both really drawn to the private investigators.
Yeah.
Wondering, what are your influences, or do you have a favourite fictional private, PI or anything?
Well, definitely for me, one thing that I was always really scared of doing was a straight-out police procedural, and I really enjoyed your one, and you've obviously done loads of research to know how to set it up, with actual, the police characters, because that's probably why in the first couple of books I opted for private eyes, because I thought they can kind of do what they want. They don't have to follow the procedure. So if we get it wrong, nobody's gonna know. Because I have heard so many horror stories about people. I think it was Jared Brennan was chatting to one time, and he said he was doing an event, and someone was like, you said you went down the third door on the left in that police station. I know there isn't a third door on the left; it's on the right, and all these sort of things. But they don't really matter. But sometimes people can get very pedantic about the little things. But it's funny because there's a lot of private detectives and things, and then I've now got quite interested in more doing like the domestic thriller, because I quite like the idea of things just kind of exploding with ordinary people but having very dramatic things. So that's what because I'm actually very enjoying doing the standalones at the minute. You know, I know everybody's different, or what takes your fancy at a particular time, I suppose.
I quite fancy the idea of the standalone. But I'm in the kind of strange position now that I'm finishing off the third book in the Terror trilogy, and I got what I think is a good idea to lead me out of that. So it's obviously going to be within the farce investigation thing. As far as having kind of favourite detectives and so on, I'm actually going towards the detective idea. I think I'm probably like Simon, and because I was only starting out, I was kind of thinking, okay, I probably don't need to, or I don't know enough, and I'm probably not confident enough. And it was all about, I suppose, my characters were learning to do what they were doing at the same time I was learning how to be a writer. So it kind of made sense to have it that, you know, it would either have to be a police person coming in at the bottom and working their way up through the ranks or so on, or someone who's just taken out of another walk of life and, you know, plunged into the whole kind of private detective thing, which is what I plunged for.
Yeah. No, that is interesting, because both of you are on your second book in a series, and Simon, you're Bongo Fury, isn't it? You've done your novellas. You've done two in that series as well.
Yeah, because
so
it's sort of
the third book. I'm interested in this because my second book in my D.I. Sloan book series comes out in November, and then I have got the third draft maybe of the third book, but it's kind of like being put aside. But you know, I'm just wondering about. I know James is writing a third book in a series too.
Yeah.
And is there going to be a third book? I think my internet is
mine's
having a bit of trouble here.
There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, there we go, we're back.
Yep.
That's not bad. That was the first dodgy connection so far, I think.
That was a bit dodgy there. No, so just saying, you know, I'm writing the third book of a series, so is James. And what about you, Simon? Would you go back to either of your series that you've written?
Yes, it's funny because the first two I wrote back to back, and they were the Chase from the Rocks and Kill for the Poet with a main character, Brian Caskey, and I sort of left that because I thought I'll try something else, and you know, and then I did a standalone, which I enjoyed doing. But in the background, because I did those with different publishers, and then I released the novellas by myself because they're a wee bit different. They're more sort of gritty and hopefully funny sort of ones, and I did those under my own little sort of self-publishing umbrella. But I ended up putting three of them out together last year, and it's kind of reached the conclusion, but I might go back to it. But then, fun enough, the book that just came out a couple of weeks ago, The Mark, and I really enjoyed. I always trying to do something different with each book, whether it's change the sort of narrative or, you know, mix it up with different points of view. And then I tried that one from the female perspective, first person. I'm not really sure why I did that because I was really worried about doing it. But I just give it a go.
Sorry, Simon, can I interrupt you to say you did a really good job with that?
Oh, that's very kind.
I don't know why. I don't know why it would be an issue because I write from male point of views, and I don't know why. You know, people say, "Oh, I think you got that voice," and I think, you know, we're all people, and we kind of can put ourselves into each other's shoes and kind of imagine.
Yeah.
But no, you did. Yeah,
that's kind because it was work because I wanted to get it right, and I sort of thought I've done so many first person male characters, you know. I want to sort of mix it up and try something different, and she's definitely my favorite character to write. I really enjoyed it, and then that's when it just come out because you know how slow it is to get things published, and so it's probably finished that 2 years ago, and since that I've finished another book which is a standalone, which is completely different, and I've started this other book which is completely different again. But now that one's just come out, quite a few people have said they like her and they like to see a sequel to it. So, but I'm just sort of thinking, I don't know when I'm gonna do it, but I would like to as well. You know, I thought even maybe a novella, like a novella sequel, could possibly try and do at some point. Might be nice, or go back to it and do a full one. I suppose that's it. You do become attached to the characters. I mean, I definitely like the idea of zipping back and forward. Like the likes of Joe Spain is amazing at doing that. She'll put out these amazing, standalones and then go back to your series. And also the way people like Ian Rankin can keep a series going for flipping years and years. I don't know how they managed to do it. Like his last Rebus one I thought was one of the best. How he can still keep it going after, like, it must be 15, 20 books. It's incredible.
But do you think you need to mix it up with like some short stories too, or standalones? What do you think, James? With you've got your series and you're saying you're thinking of standalones too.
Yeah, I wanted to write a standalone because what I'm finding is in writing a series, it's actually quite a slow work in progress because you want each book to work as a standalone.
Yeah.
And you have to obviously write it and revisit it and edit it in such a way that people who have read the other books in the series won't lose interest, but equally you have a new. So I'm the type of person that would take on kind of 2 writing projects at once, but I'm kind of thinking that to develop myself a wee bit more, I maybe need to try that.
Yeah.
So I maybe would look at certainly the short story angle, because I think that's something, as I said earlier, I've literally just started recently, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of shorter word count, I think it makes you work a bit harder.
Yeah, that's true.
In terms of actually meeting the word count, but also in terms of your language and your editing and all that stuff.
Yeah. But would you both not find though that when you're sort of in the middle of the book, when it's getting a wee bit monotonous, do you not think that then you have your best idea for a different book that you want to get stuck into instead? It seems much more delightful to spend your time doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got the idea for the 4th book, as I was writing this one, and my mind was going to the 4th one and how we're going to work that out and all that sort of stuff. But when I get moments like that now, when you're writing those scenes where not that much is really happening in terms of action, but it's a necessary scene. So when I get into that, I kind of think, okay, I'll maybe reread something else or I'll go off. Or when in doubt, put a new murder into the book.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's what Raymond Chandler said when he was writing. If you're ever short and something needs to happen, just have somebody come through the door holding a gun. but Kelly, you seem to be able to get a first draft done like really fast. I think you said that about a couple of books, haven't you?
I do. I did write my first book. I wrote in 2.5 years, and it didn't get published. But the publisher had said, "But you said you're writing another book, the bones of it. Can we have a look at it?" But that one I had just written it really quickly, and I think it lent itself to that because it was inside one young man's mind, and it was a diary, so it was kind of psychological thriller kind of stroke literary fiction. But I thought I didn't lose his stream of thought, I think, for writing it fast. And since I did that, that's what I do. And I might do a couple of drafts and go back, go on to something else. So for me, I think that I really need to have that variety. And writing a series, I don't know how someone could write 20 books in a series and not do your standalone, have a break from it.
But it's great to be able to get like a first one, because I find my first draft probably ends up being I wouldn't call it clean. It's just not not completely terrible, but I think my first draft still, I could do a first draft in anything less than about 5 months probably.
Yeah.
See, I would be even longer than that, because obviously my other role is in education and teaching and so on, so it's in my nature to edit as I go. So, for say maybe the first half hour when I sit down to write, I'm not writing at all. I'm rewriting and editing, and then I kind of think that works for me because I do it so piecemeal that by the time I get the end of the first draft, starting it was so long ago that you come to it with a reader's perspective.
Yeah.
So
it's probably pretty clean by the time you're done with that, I would think.
I think that whenever I'm doing workshops, it could be in poetry or short stories, and I'm saying, right, we're just going to free write, and there's two types of people, isn't there? There's people who are editing as they go, and then they've written 2 lines, but they're really beautiful, and then they got 2 pages, you know.
And you can definitely change
just
your
thinking
style.
about, it changes over time too, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, because at the start I would have kept going back and editing it, and I think I just did my own head in that I couldn't get finished and anything because you know you're editing it, so now I tend not to go look back at the typos. But then I find my second draft, I don't know if I've become more pedantic or just worse at editing, but it takes me. I always think editing it'll take a couple of weeks, but to get a good second edit, it takes me again a couple of months. I'm going through it every night.
Yeah. And just speaking about process, I was just wondering, because Simon, you are a musician too, aren't you? And in the Mark, it's really like there's a soundtrack with it, you know, there's loads of references to music. So I was wondering, do you listen to music whenever you're writing, or?
Yeah, I pretty much always do actually, because and it always creeps in, you know. I try sometimes not let it creep in too much because I don't want to become, you know, really self-indulgent. But the music does come in, and it creates a bit of a backdrop. But I try and do choose it, you know, to have a bit of a reason why certain people are into certain music, and you know, other people are into other things. But it is funny, it does just creep in, and I'm actually the complete opposite when it comes to writing music, because I would be very much just whack it out and record it in a night and it's done. You know, with the rawness and everything. Whereas writing, it would be very much not like that, like wanting to I suppose you know, refine it and stuff. But yeah, it's funny the way they sort of both seep in and out actually. But yeah, because then a few people said they were listening to some of the music whilst they were reading the last quick, so I put up like a wee playlist on YouTube. But I didn't used to be able to listen to music while I was writing. I would just listen to a bit of jazz because without any of the singing, because I found it too distracting. But now actually I can listen to anything. I quite like having it sort of in the background, especially like I would do writing maybe when my wife's sitting beside me and she's doing her schoolwork. I'll sit writing, so it sort of just blots you out from the room a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
True.
What about you, James? Do you have a particular process? Do you listen to music or anything?
I don't. I like the idea of it, and you know what Simon's saying about being able to kind of blot out the room. I think that would be fantastic, but it's just not me. I've tried it, and you know I end up being distracted, and I don't really get that much done. So I literally just have to sit there and spend, you know, that kind of cruel half hour where you're like, you've typed 4 words. And you're kind of, I said, what do you want to write for an hour? But, you know, it's like 55 minutes have passed, and then you suddenly think, oh, right, okay. And then
that's when you sort of think, oh, I got a good bit down there, and then you check your word count. Oh, flip, a couple of 100 words, like flip's sake. You know, is that it?
I know, but when you look at the quality, though.
I think that changes over time too, doesn't it? Because whenever I started, you know, the kids were really wee, and my husband would be watching documentaries, like there's always like boxing things, you know, on the TV, and I don't know how I blanked that out, but I think I'm going to have a book about a boxer at some stage. But I just need
probably seep in there.
Yeah, nobody around me. So, Simon, how do you get away with the perfect murder?
How do you get away with the perfect murder?
That's a really cool question.
Well, that's nice.
Asking for a friend.
I remember actually I think it was a documentary. Was it Andrew Marr? I think there's a documentary on a history of crime on BBC a couple of years ago. It was actually really good, and they have a lot about locked room mysteries. And I don't think it was Agatha Christie, but someone like that. And there was one where somebody was shot through like a vent with an ice bullet, and that killed them. And obviously the ice melted, so that was a pretty perfect. I remember liking that idea, and I did that in my second book. I thought I'm going to give myself a locked room mystery just for the crack, really. And I thought I'll try and work out an elaborate way to have it work, you know, just for my own amusement.
But you know, you saying that one of the reasons I kind of shied away from short stories and actually writing for a while was the Roald Dahl story, Lamb to the Slaughter.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, the one where she kills her husband with a frozen leg of lamb and then feeds lamb to the police.
It's really good. All those, what is it? What do you call them? Tales of the Unexpected. Yeah, they work just so well. They really stick in your head. Did you read the one about the guy who's gambling and he's like, I'll give you this amount of money, but if you lose, I'll have to take away your little finger. And the guy's sitting there while he's gambling. He's just sitting there with the knife above his finger.
I didn't actually read it, but as a kid, I remember. Do you remember the Tales of the Unexpected were on TV?
Yeah,
I was on like really late on Sunday night. We're meant to be a Féile, and that exact story sticks out in my head from that.
Yeah. It's really quite freaky.
Yeah. I know. I wonder what it is. What do you think it is that has drawn you to crime fiction, James? What do you think? Is there?
I've always been kind of interested in kind of crime and the supernatural a wee bit. So anything that I was ever going to write was going to be in and around that, because again, it was right about what you know. I mean, my whole reason for writing came about because of a supernatural event, but that's a story for another time probably. So it's, as I say, write about what you know, and I love watching all the the true crime dramas and all that sort of stuff. And I know it's such a big popular genre that everybody's interested in it. Yeah, and I think why, I suppose, is because many people say it that it deals with the the big things that are happening in society at the time. So, and for me, actually, that was reflected in my writing without me even realising it, because when I was launching the second book, people were asking about the series, so far, what they were about and all that sort of stuff. And when I was actually coming to analyse it, I realised that one of the major themes running through the two books is identity. Yeah. And during the time I was writing them, I had literally changed my career. I'd become a new dad. There was lots of different things happening. Yeah. So I was probably processing that, through fiction.
True crime, yeah. What about you, Simon? What has drawn you to writing crime of all the genres you could?
It's probably similar to James, because I suppose it is writing what you know, but writing what you're interested in. So I suppose the first thing is you're trying to entertain yourself. Or I mean, definitely at the very start, I could look back at the first short stories I wrote, and I can be like, I was trying to be Raymond Chandler in that one, and in that one I was trying to be Richard Stark doing a Parker heist. But I suppose you're gonna be trying to write in your kind of influences, and hopefully you develop into your own sort of thing. But I definitely never consciously thought about doing crime. I just didn't really think about doing anything else. But I think that's why with crime, it's almost anything. Almost anything dramatic is kind of going to be verging on the crime. I've always thought that you could go and put a slice of toast in the toaster, but it'll be much more dramatic if somebody's waiting behind the door with a knife or a gun. You can write about anything and try and get in whatever theme you're interested in, which is definitely try and do more and more, and things that you're trying to get across and ideas. But you can just do it within crime. I think it's just a more dramatic way of writing something. But it's quite interesting. I find it interesting whenever people would do different genres, or even have different names they would use for different genres and things too. Like Ian Banks and doing the sci-fi as Ian Banks. I suppose there's that.
Would you ever do that? Would you ever do that if you wrote in another genre as well? Would you use two different names?
I don't really. I don't know if I would do. I don't know if I would do anything that would be completely outside it, that it would do it. But then I suppose the likes of Stuart Neville, he does his Halen Beck books, because they're distinguished by being in America and being more kind of hard boiled. So I suppose there's scope to. Would you ever do it yourselves?
I have got a couple of books set in America. I don't know if I would use a different thing, so I don't think they're different enough from what I'm writing. What about you, James? Would you ever write about the supernatural, do you think, James? And would you have another name? Another pen name?
No, well, I think I would probably tackle it, but I don't know, with that particular genre, it's very difficult to actually make it come across as being, a believable story and all that sort of stuff. And the topic that you're obviously tackling is, that does what it says in the tin, the supernatural, not really believable. So I don't know if I would ever really tackle it. I would like to, but for the moment, I'm quite satisfied being able to kind of dip into, inclusion of wee supernatural scenes here and there. As far as writing under a different pen name goes, no, I don't think I would. I don't really know why I wouldn't, but no, because I think whatever you're writing about, your writing's a reflection of who you are and your identity. So
I've heard a few writers. I think it was maybe on the panel with you, James and Stuart Neville that time, and he was talking about it, and I've heard other people say, "No, I want to have my name on it if I've written the darn thing." There's something about wanting to have your name on it, which because then, like to Steve Kavanagh, I hadn't realised till after the first couple of books that it wasn't actually his name.
That's right.
In a way, I think it would be strange that it's someone else's name. I don't know, but I suppose.
If you're writing in a different genre and the bad reviews start coming in, you might be quite happy to be somebody else.
That's true, yeah.
And James, you teach crime fiction, don't you? And are you moving on online at the minute? Are you with lockdown or how's that?
I am, yeah. Actually, we were still, as I was saying earlier, finishing off the course just before lockdown started, and I usually get the people I work with to fill in questionnaires and so on. And they were saying that they always say the course is too short, but that's the allocation I have for it. So I've been thinking about doing a longer course anyway, and developing it. And then I thought, well, this is going to be, you'll have to develop this for different people at different stages, because what I'm tending to find happening now is that people are coming back, so they might have done your crime fiction course before, but they're developing as a writer themselves, so they want to come back, and you can't teach them the same stuff obviously all the time. So what I thought was, we'll maybe extend it out and give people that more time to actually develop their own work and support them through writing their own work.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I'm in the process of moving it online. I've got the course pretty much finished, but what I'm actually doing is, through the people that I've had in the classes in the past, we have a WhatsApp group where I would continue to try and support them as best I can and so on. So what I'm doing now is going back to them and saying, right, you're all at different stages. What do you need now, and what would be good for you, so that I can factor that into the course and make it really, I suppose, tailored to the needs of everyone who wants to do it. Which is actually, it's a big challenge, but it's actually a lot of fun as well, especially when you see, someone who was afraid to put pen to paper in week one, now sending you an email with a manuscript saying, can you look at this? Sorry, it's 10,000 words long or whatever at the moment. But it's great to see.
Yeah. Brilliant. Great. And it's all having to adapt, I suppose, the way we have to adapt everything at the minute anyway. And you're having to adapt.
We're going to be completely probably Zoom based, but I'll be hopefully making announcements about that in the next few days.
Yeah.
Very good.
Great. And Simon, you do your walking tours, which I presume won't happen for a little while. But tell us about your tours.
I mean, I suppose I don't know at this stage if anything could happen the rest of the year, because I think it's there's a question mark over most things, I suppose. But yeah, we did the Belfast Noir tour, so that's where I first met James. Actually, he came along on one of the tours in the early days. But so I do them around the local crime scene and the different locations, the different books, and about the local writers, and then a lot to do with the shows that are set here, like Line of Duty and The Fall and things like that. But yeah, we're meant to do a really big one at New Ireland, and it was all sold out and everything. But then I think that date became about the first weekend of lockdown as it happened. Looking back, it would have been so weird thinking you'd have been crammed together like 30 people in like doorways, trying to take them around places. But hopefully, I mean, I know that I work with a company called Belfast Hidden Tours, and I know they'd be very keen to try and do something when we're allowed to, whether it might be very small groups or even one-on-one or something. But hopefully, they'll be back once all this calms down, and I suppose as things move forward, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something I always thought would be really good with that, Simon, because obviously I've been on the tour and it's fantastic. It would be great to get all the local crime writers together and everyone just go on the tour.
Yeah, remember there was one time where that almost happened. There was like a whole Facebook conversation and loads of people were up for it, but we just never got the date down because it was just pretty great crack. I mean, we've had ideas as well for doing kind of, what would you call them, the interactive ones. Like we've written a couple of little plots and having like actors coming in and murders happen. Like I love to put on one like that as well sometimes.
I was present in those conversations.
So if you're up for being involved in something, yeah, let me know. And you see, when all this comes down, we'll have to have lots of literary belated launches, like your book, Kelly, and my book, and loads of people that have books out. You know, we should have little events going. Hopefully, you know, once it's all calmed down.
Well, if the line going, mine will probably just about be finished.
Yeah, probably will.
Yeah. So what is next for you, James? When do you expect your third book in the Terror series to be out there?
Well, the manuscript is pretty much done. I'm still at the kind of editing, and there's one or two bits I want to change around. But because I work with my publisher, as part of my employment, I kind of have a lot more input into the book than I maybe normally would have done in the past. So now I'll be looking at maybe cover design and being involved in the cover design and all that sort of stuff, and getting the final minutes and all that. And actually, I've been dabbling a wee bit with formatting the books and so on myself as well. So very much a learning process at the moment. But I'm hoping to have it. I don't want to rush myself, so I'm kind of aiming for probably around October, November time. And the reason I'm doing that actually is by sheer chance, my books have always been released, kind of reprints and whatever, on like family birthdays or family occasions. So my first one was deliberate. I put it out on my 40th birthday as a gift to myself. But the other one, the reprint of that was my wife's birthday. The second book was on my daughter's birthday.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So I'm kind of thinking I'm just going to do that. The only other thing is our wedding anniversary, and that's in August. There's no way it's going to be finished by then.
That's just pushing it too much.
You might get in trouble for that as well.
Very good. So we'll have that. Yeah, we'll have it to look. Does it have a title yet?
It has a working title of Dark Light, and that kind of came about due to something I of the second book. So I'm still in a bit of a dilemma, because the other two books, obviously they center around a serial killer called Terror. The name Terror has been in the title of the other two books. So part of me wants to just call it a day, have a Dark Light, and obviously put something in that relates to terror. Or do I just change the name? So that's conversations that are happening.
Yeah, because you can have a wee strap line under it and get the terror in. Because
I wish I could turn my screen around, because I actually have the strap lines here on my notice.
Oh really?
Yeah. Great. And what about you, Simon? What's next now after The Mark?
Well, I've got the next book. It's completely finished. Well, all the sort of first author drafts. So it's called Witness, and it's set in East Belfast actually, and it's completely different. It's to do with a kind of evangelical church, and this pastor who came from a bit of a sort of troubled background and some paramilitary connections and stuff, and he's completely turned away from that. But I thought it'd be interesting to see sort of how much could have changed throughout the book, from him wanting to make good decisions, how sort of bad could I make him without him wanting to be bad. I thought would be a nice idea. So it's all about things just going worse and worse and worse and worse, and him getting involved in things he shouldn't do, and then see sort of where it goes. So I finished that one. So at the minute I'm just looking around for a publisher for that one, and then I'm busy myself with the new book, which is different again. So yeah, it's busy enough.
Great, right. Well, lots of crime fiction still to come from the North End.
When's your second?
And your one's going to be out November, is it?
My second one will be out in November.
Fantastic. The first one was amazing.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
So that is, it's going to be called problems with girls, and it is, the first one was a bit kind of feminist because it has a female detective, but the second one is very much about young women being quite invisible in Northern Ireland, and it was a bit more feminist, which I think is a bit of a different slant. But I'm looking forward to that coming out, but it's all a bit of a, I don't want to rush myself as well, because there's so much going on at the minute, isn't there? So we're all busy at the minute.
It'd be nice if we might be allowed, I don't know, small launches by then. You never know. You might be able to do something, I suppose, or I don't know. Are you allowed to have like outdoor launch in a marquee or something? You know, have a couple of people. Who knows?
That's worth thinking about. You've hit on something there, Simon.
Garden different tonight. We have our scarves on and our gloves on and everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think that brings us up. No. I think that brings us up to about time.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you very much, James Murphy and Simon Maltman. It was a pleasure talking to you both.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'll just pop up, if anyone wants to get any of our details or anything, I'll just pop them up on screen now. But thank you both.
Thank you very much. Nice to get a wee catch up and a bit of a chat.
Yes,
definitely. Absolutely. Right, I'll just take this off again.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. And if anyone obviously wants to get in contact with
us. So this is great. This is going to show how to get in contact with us all.
Yeah, absolutely. So our social media and all that sort of stuff, our websites are all there. And anyone who wants to get in contact with us are certainly welcome. Simon's obviously looking for a publisher, so all offers welcome. I'll only take 10%, Simon, don't worry.
That's very reasonable of you.
Okay, folks, right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.